Hello, this is Sky News at 10, live from Downing Street, where today we have a new Prime Minister and a new government. History was made with a Labour landslide and the first Labour Prime Minister since 2010.
Whether you voted Labour or not, in fact, especially if you did not, I say to you directly, my government will serve you.
Sir Keir wastes no time in announcing his new cabinet with Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, and Rachel Reeves, the first female Chancellor. After a bruising night for the Tories and the loss of some big beasts, Rishi Sunak resigns as the Prime Minister.
I am sorry. I have given this job my all, but you have sent a clear signal that the government of the United Kingdom must change.
Sir Ed Davey celebrates Lib Dem style after a very successful night, winning a record-breaking number of seats.
Any more for any more?
Actually, yes! He's just a liar and a racist.
Nigel Farage is heckled at a reform event as the party claims a fifth seat and promises to change the electoral process. In Scotland, the SNP leader says soul-searching is needed over the hopes for independence after many of the party's seats are wiped out. And we'll go back to our target towns, Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes, where the result is symbolic of the general election. Plus, we'll take a first look at what tomorrow's front pages are saying in our press preview, live from Downing Street, right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening, live from Downing Street. This building behind me has a new occupant after a landslide win for the Labour Party, a new Prime Minister to govern the country. He arrived just as the sun broke through the clouds, providing a brief respite from the rain, and it followed a historic night during which Sir Keir Starmer emerged victorious. The Conservative Party hit with an almighty defeat, handing Labour the largest majority in decades. Well, the new Prime Minister addressed the nation from this street earlier today, promising to change politics to public service and serve the people. So let's take a look then at the numbers. Labour has won 412 seats, more than doubling the 202 they won in 2019. The Conservatives are on 121. That's only around a third of the 365 seats they won under Boris Johnson, and the lowest number of seats in their history. It was a record-breaking night for the Liberal Democrats, who were on 71, up from just 11 at the last election. But a disastrous night for the SNP. They've ended up with just 9 MPs, having won 48 in 2019. Sinn Féin became the largest party in Northern Ireland with 7 seats, although none of their MPs will be sitting in Westminster. Reform are on 5, including victory for Nigel Farage at the 8th attempt, but it was the vote share that made a difference for that party. Plaid Cymru have 4 seats, as do the Greens, who have quadrupled their number of MPs. Well, Sky's political editor Beth Rigby reports now on the new Labour government.
It was an election campaign with little jeopardy, but even so, they can barely believe it. This man, only the second Labour leader in half a century to win a majority from opposition. This, a landmark moment and a historic win. Keir Starmer said he had a mountain to climb to bring Labour back from near wipeout in 2019, and he's just scaled Everest, arriving in Downing Street with his wife Victoria and the second largest Labour majority ever. But after a disciplined campaign, now, finally, taking just a moment to drink it all in.
Our country has voted decisively for change. Now, this wound, this lack of trust, can only be healed by actions, not words. I know that. But we can make a start today. Whether you voted Labour or not, in fact, especially if you did not, I say to you directly, my government will serve you.
Now, Prime Minister, this a speech less about party politics and more about national unity, trying to reflect the mood of a country divided, disillusioned, fed up with politics.
If I asked you now whether you believe that Britain will be better for your children, I know too many of you would say no. And so my government will fight every day until you believe again. You have given us a clear mandate, and we will use it to deliver change, to restore service and respect to politics. So, with respect and humility, I invite you all to join this government of service in the mission of national renewal. Our work is urgent, and we begin it today. Thank you very much.
A rare glimpse behind the famous black door. Keir Starmer, only the 7th Labour leader who's made it across this threshold. And these, some of the people who helped get him here. Outside Number 10, the street full. The world's media gathered to watch this rare change of governing party. The reign that defined the start of his campaign, marking the end too. Rishi Sunak out of the door, resolute, resigned, maybe even a little relieved.
I have given this job my all, but you have sent a clear signal that the government of the United Kingdom must change, and yours is the only judgment that matters. I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss. To all the Conservative candidates and campaigners who worked tirelessly but without success, I am sorry that we could not deliver what your efforts deserved. This is a difficult day, at the end of a number of difficult days. But I leave this job honoured to have been your Prime Minister. This is the best country in the world.
Mr Sunak and his wife left Downing Street to jeers. Off to the palace to tender his resignation. Within minutes of 14 years of Conservative rule officially ending, the new PM installed.
Your Majesty, you must be utterly exhausted and ill on your knees, but not much, quite a grueling.
It was an even longer night for the losing side. 12 cabinet ministers out, future leadership contenders gone. A past Prime Minister punished by her constituents, her career in party politics over for now. Votes flowed to the smaller parties too, a disillusioned electorate looking for new answers. Nigel Farage finally on his way to Parliament on his 8th attempt. An impressive 4 million votes, but only 5 seats to show for it. The Green Party breaking records too, securing 4 seats. Ed Davey leading the Liberal Democrats to win their highest number of seats ever. They are the 3rd largest party again. Cabinet appointments also marked a historical first, with the top jobs all earned by women. Angela Rayner, the Prime Minister's deputy, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, and Rachel Reeves, the first ever female chancellor. Keir Starmer's made history. The scale of his victory comes but once in decades. And with this massive win comes a huge opportunity. He now has the chance to become one of this country's most consequential prime ministers alongside the likes of Thatcher or Blair. But he has secured a big majority on a smaller vote share. Support for his government is far shallower than it is wide. Yes, he has won decisively, but now his challenge is to prove to the public that trust in politics really can be restored. Landslides are often built on shaky foundations, and Keir Starmer knows the country wants action, not words. He has promised change. Now the test begins. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
Guys? Well, we'll hear from Beth in a moment, but first, Sky's data editor Ed Conway is at our election map with more detail on how the night went.
Thanks, Anna. Let's just have a look, first of all, at where things began. So in 2019, this is how the political map of the UK looked. And just look at how much blue there is across, particularly England, in Wales as well. And look how yellow Scotland is for the SNP. And now look at the transformation that has happened as a result of this election. That's the landslide, but also the political geography changing in the UK. Look at Wales, no Conservative seats there at all. And also look at Scotland, where the SNP have been not quite wiped out, but certainly a lot of Labour there in Scotland. And partly the story here, if we take those hexagons that are basically representing constituencies and put them onto this chart here, you can see how the landslide happened, with Labour getting over that 326 it needed to win, well over it. The Lib Dems doing incredibly well as well, and the Conservatives, what's left of the Conservative Party, over there. And looking beneath the surface, you can see some real changes here as well. OK, you saw that kind of Labour landslide. There was the big increase in seats that the Labour Party had, but also beneath the surface, losing 7 as well. That's partly perhaps a Gaza implication there. The Conservatives 121 down 252, but the Lib Dems there, the SNP down to 9 seats in Scotland, and Reform doing less well than the exit poll suggested, but having a big impact beneath the surface. And you see that impact when you look at the swing in the party shares. OK, so this is showing you the swing from Labour to the Conservatives, anything above the bar, and from the Conservatives to Labour is anything below the bar. So that's 1997, that's Tony Blair, and here is this result here. About 11% swing from the Conservatives to the Labour Party, the biggest swing that we have seen essentially in history. But what's quite interesting is when you break down these bars and see how much of that is actually down to Conservative moves in the share and how much of it is down to the Labour Party. And in this case, look, the vast majority of that 11% is because of a collapse in the Conservative vote. Only a tiny bit is an increase in the Labour share. Labour not actually gaining much of the share of the vote. And if you look at the total number of votes cast, it was less for Keir Starmer than for Jeremy Corbyn in 2019. That was a terrible election for Labour in terms of seats. And partly what explains this is the fact that the Conservative vote has been eaten into by Reform, and the upshot is Labour didn't need to get as many votes to win each seat. This bar is showing you that. It's showing you how many votes each government, going all the way back to the 1920s, how many votes they needed for every seat that they won, OK? So that's the Conservatives last election. Look at Labour this time, OK? That, if I draw a line there, is the lowest amount of votes needed to win the election here per seat since the invention of universal suffrage, since the 1920s. For the Conservative Party, though, it is a more straightforward story. A story, really, that goes back to how many votes they lost here and how many votes they won. This is showing you Conservative seats going all the way back to the 1850s. The low point before this election was 1906, 141 seats. Just look at where they were this time around. Look at that bar. That is the worst result for the Conservatives in terms of seats. It's also the case in terms of share of the vote in 2 centuries. A truly historic election here, which has changed the political story in the UK.
It certainly was. Ed Conway there, thank you very much indeed. Well, there you have it then, a new Labour government, a new Prime Minister and a new cabinet. So let's bring in our political editor, Beth Rigby now. So a landslide for Labour, an extraordinary election, threw up a number of quirks, collapsing parties, but at the end of the day, in the building behind us, a new Prime Minister.
A new Prime Minister, and just to capture the moment of that, he's only the second Labour leader in 50 years, in half a century, to win a majority. He goes in there, as I said, with the possibilities of being as consequential a Prime Minister as Clement Attlee in 1945 or indeed Tony Blair in 1997. But there are quirks in this because he has won a massive landslide, but it is on shaky ground. And the reason I say that is when you look at the vote share, Keir Starmer has just won 33.8% of the vote, 412 seats, a majority of 168. It's only slightly higher than Corbyn won in 2019 when he gave the Labour Party its worst ever defeat since 1935. Blair got a vote share of 43.2% of the vote. Starmer's team were acutely aware of it. One of them, ahead of the election, said to me, if you can go from travelling from about 200 seats, which is what they had, to 360 or 70, they ended up with a bit more than that, you can travel that far back again in the opposite direction. It's in your hands. You cannot assume that a possibly big majority means anything in the next election. And that's why you heard Keir Starmer talking about governing humbly and putting government back into the service of working people, because he knows that having won this momentous majority, having the opportunity to really reshape the country, to have this opportunity of a decade of national renewal, as he puts it, that he has to win trust back.
And just quickly, with so much to digest, the bottom line now is a new cabinet. What is their urgent priority come tomorrow?
They're going to meet tomorrow. They are going to, this is one source in Starmer's team, focus on economy growth for everyone, everywhere. They said we have to show progress on the first steps as well as a new way of governing. The first steps, as you know it, will be cutting NHS waiting lists, trying to tackle small boats, growing the economy, getting more teachers into schools. But they want to have a sense of urgency about it because they understand that they have a huge mandate in terms of seats. But this change election, they have to deliver change. So they're going to hit the ground running, and we're going to be even busier. Is it possible?
I've just seen a light go out in number 11. There's a lot of getting used to for them, isn't there? Beth Rigby, thank you very much indeed. And, for everything over the last 24 hours as well. Now, Rishi Sunak said sorry to the country today as he officially stood aside as Prime Minister. He stressed that he has taken responsibility for the loss, and it was a bruising loss for the Conservative Party, with Tory strongholds for more than a century switching to other parties. Aldershot in Hampshire has been held by the Tories since 1918. But the Labour candidate, Alex Baker, made history in the constituency, beating the Conservatives' Leo Doherty with a majority of more than 5,500. The Tories saw their share of the vote collapse by nearly 28%, with Labour and Reform the parties to benefit most. Our People and Politics correspondent, Nick Martin, has been in Aldershot and reports now on a historic defeat for the Conservatives.
For the Tories, this was hallowed ground, predictable politics in the heart of Hampshire. But Aldershot, home of the British Army, has, like many towns, been battling a cost of living crisis.
My name's Natalie, this is Liam, and we live in Aldershot.
Who did you vote for?
Labour.
Natalie blames the Conservatives for the massive rise in interest rates.
And you felt that in your pocket?
Yeah, very much so. I think our mortgage increased by about £600 a month.
What?
Yeah.
That is a vote-changing amount of money.
It is, yeah.
Isn't it?
It is, yeah.
That is enough to go.
And that was the main reason, really. Just one thing, I guess. But, how do you find £600 a month? We're really struggling. I feel like we kind of get forgotten about because we're not poor enough to get benefits and we're not rich enough to be surviving comfortably. So we're just kind of in the middle. So something's got to change.
Melvin Bucket was a lifelong Tory.
I voted Labour this time, yeah. The Conservatives, they run out of steam and you get the feeling that it was chaos.
So Labour particularly didn't win you over, it's that the Tories steered you away from there?
I would have said so, yes, yeah.
Until now, it would have been absolutely unthinkable that a town like this would vote anything other than Conservative. But that's exactly what's happened. More than a century of political loyalty torn up. But the political landscape this time around was different. There was an alternative.
So how did you vote?
I voted Reform.
And how have you voted in the past, traditionally?
I've always voted Conservative, but I thought Reform had a lot more going for it than any other party.
But you don't regret your Reform vote leading to a Labour candidate in a staunch Tory area?
Not really. No, not really.
Not really, or a little bit?
Well, yeah, OK, a little bit. But, you know, like I said, it's just got to be what it is, isn't it?
My name is Reza, and we had this shop for 20 years. We've seen a lot of up and downs.
It's about change, and for some, it didn't seem to matter what that change looked like.
Do you think that Labour got in here because people wanted Labour in?
I don't think so. You know, people are fed up. So I don't think if Labour Party has to celebrate anything. They've been opportunistic. They've taken advantage of the misconduct, whatever, of the Conservatives over the last 2 years. And God help them.
For wins like this to really mean anything, Labour needs to hold on to seats like this one. And that could take a miracle. Nick Martin, Sky News, Aldershot.
Well, the Conservatives are now faced with the task of picking themselves up and working out how they want to shape the party as the official opposition, with a new leader to be chosen to replace Rishi Sunak. Our deputy political editor Sam Coates reports now on the Conservatives' blue ruin.
A brutal verdict on 14 years of Conservative government. How do you describe a collapse this stark?
A devastating result.
A battering.
Very bad result.
Our crushing defeat.
An awful night. I mean, it's dreadful.
The political map redrawn. 250 Tory seats lost, a record. So many big-name losers. 12 cabinet ministers gone, another record. Among them, the Defence Secretary blaming the Tory party soap opera.
Today, voters have simply said, if you can't agree with each other, then we can't agree to vote for you.
And an ex-Prime Minister, who many in her party blame for this hammering, ousted too. Liz Truss leaving the stage after the biggest swing from Tory to Labour in a single seat ever. Just 24% of voters backed the Conservatives, the lowest share in the party's 200-year history. A damning public rejection. The Conservative Party, Britain's most successful election-fighting machine, now raking over its worst ever defeat. Who takes them forward and in what direction isn't clear, but there are at least two very different visions for the future. Nigel Farage's Reform Party accelerated this Conservative collapse.
21,225.
How to get back those voters is a question that will dominate the leadership election to come. Ex-Home Secretary Suella Braverman has said her party should welcome Nigel Farage.
The Conservative Party has let you down, and I will do everything in my power to rebuild trust. We need to listen to you.
Ed Davey's Lib Dem's a threat pulling the party in the opposite direction. They've claimed dozens of wins in traditional Tory heartlands and already driving some top Tories to make the case for moderation.
It's not just about moving, it's about making sure that we are a broad-based party. It would be wrong for us to believe that we can just apply or promote simple, thin and I think impractical solutions.
Conservative headquarters, reeling from a calamitous campaign, now has a party leadership race to organise. Rishi Sunak says he'll stay on for a short time. The first decision is how quickly his replacement should be chosen.
What do you think should happen today, tomorrow, over the next few weeks?
Well, I know what I would like. I would like the Prime Minister, he's still the Prime Minister for the next few hours, to stay on and say that we're going to have a proper think about this and there will be a new leader of the Conservative Party late in this year or perhaps early into next year. A precipitous leadership contest would be absolutely toxic.
The Conservative Party has lost hundreds of MPs and its grip on power. A party without direction and without purpose. The road back to Downing Street now looks very long indeed. Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Yeah. Well, as we've seen in the numbers, there have been some seismic shifts across all 4 nations. Sinn Féin became the largest party in Northern Ireland, and the Conservatives were wiped out in Wales. Let's take a look at the seismic shift in Scotland first, though. Support for the SNP has crumbled. John Swinney's party losing 39 of the 48 seats they won in 2019 to be left with a rump of just 9 MPs. Labour were the biggest beneficiaries, gaining 36 seats, up from just the single Scottish MP just 5 years ago, to once again become the biggest party in Scotland. Sky's Ashna Hurinag has more now on the SNP collapse.
The SNP's story has been shattered after a cataclysmic collapse, despite their best efforts and distractions. After winning nearly all of the seats in Scotland in 2015, they're now into single digits. The former largest party north of the border has been punished.
The party's just been hit by the Starmer tsunami. I think for everyone looking on at the moment, they'll probably be a little bit surprised at quite how far we've fallen. I certainly am, and I'm devastated by it, and I know all my colleagues will be too.
Voters have called time on a faltering record, a carousel of leaders and an investigation into party finances. What was yellow is now a red resurgence. A remarkable recovery for a party that was almost wiped out almost a decade ago.
Today, we stop the chaos, we turn the page, and we start the hard work of change.
This is an extraordinary comeback after the brutal humiliation of just one Labour MP being elected in 2019 to now just over 30. It's a huge change that very few would have thought possible in just 4 years. The leader here now striking both a celebratory and cautious tone for what lies ahead.
We have very deliberately under-promised in this election because we only wanted to make promises we could keep and only make spending commitments we knew we could afford right now.
The regaining of traditional heartlands was key, like here in Glasgow. They've had plenty of firepower to help, with regular visits from senior figures. All of it manoeuvred by a man we've watched pound the pavements to the polls.
People are talking to us and about us for the first time in a very long time.
There was much talk of the Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross. A last-minute U-turn to stand in the election backfired as he lost out. This result for the country is now the backdrop to the Scottish Parliament elections in 2 years' time. After seeing off the SNP, Labour will need to be seen to deliver. Now they're back on familiar ground. Ashna Hurinag, Sky News in Glasgow.
Well, our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis is in Glasgow for us. Our Wales correspondent Dan Whitehead is in Cardiff, and our senior Ireland correspondent David Blevins in Belfast. Conor, to you first of all, you know, a collapse for the SNP and their fight for independence left where now?
Yeah, the scale of the humiliation here, the scale of the disaster for the SNP today is huge, losing its third-party status in the House of Commons. But many will be questioning what happens next for the cause of Scottish independence. The SNP went into this election with independence on page 1, line 1 of their manifesto. Many people will remember Nicola Sturgeon saying not too long ago that this would be the election of a de facto referendum. And just earlier on this week, the current SNP leader, First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney, told me here at Sky News that he thought he could deliver independence within the next 2 to 3 years. Well, look at where we are tonight. 9 seats for the SNP, a total disaster. Political pressure, I think, for independence is now at the weakest it has been, arguably, for a decade. And the SNP will now need to get back round the table with a brand new strategy if it wants to revive the cause that it's been fighting for so many decades.
And Dan, a rout for the Tories in Wales.
Yeah, it's been 23 years, Anna, since the Tories have had not a single foothold in Wales. It was a disaster for them and a very successful night for Labour, regaining that red wall in the north of Wales. But scratch beneath the surface and we see it's not all a bed of roses for Labour. Their vote share, the number of people who actually came out and voted for Labour, was down here in Wales. So where did those votes go? Well, to find out, you have to look at who came second here in Wales. In 12 of the 27 seats that Labour won, it was Reform which beat the Conservatives, in some cases by a significant majority. That will be a concern for Labour and the Tories in the Senedd behind me here when it comes to the Welsh Parliament elections in a couple of years. We know that the new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has been on the phone with the First Minister, Vaughan Gething, tonight, promising to reset the relationship between Wales and Westminster. We know it's been a difficult relationship in the past, but this is the first time in 14 years we've got Labour on both sides of the Severn Bridge. Labour here will no longer be able to blame the government in Westminster. That excuse no longer available.
Well, to Northern Ireland then, and David, Sinn Féin, the biggest party there. David, what does this mean then for a referendum on Northern Ireland unity?
Well, Sinn Féin says it's time to prepare for a new future together on this island. The party will press this Labour government to set a timeline for a referendum on Irish unity, and it believes it now has a mandate for that, winning most Northern Ireland seats at Westminster for the first time. The Democratic Unionists had a disaster. They lost 3 seats, including Lagan Valley, held by their former leader, Jeffrey Donaldson, for nearly 30 years. North Antrim, held by the Paisley family for more than half a century. Into that new political landscape steps a new Northern Ireland Secretary, Hilary Benn. And tonight, the First Minister, Deputy First Minister and Irish Prime Minister, and Taoiseach Simon Harris, have all spoken to Sir Keir Starmer. And we are also hearing that same phrase repeatedly, that this is an opportunity for a reset in British-Irish relations.
David, live for us there in Belfast. Thank you. Well, let's take another look at those numbers then. We've spoken a lot about Labour and the Tories, but you can't ignore the impact of the Liberal Democrats or indeed Reform UK. We'll examine Sir Ed Davies' historic night in a moment. But first, Sky's Tom Cheshire reports from Clacton on the rise of Reform.
A sea change delivered by the seaside. Welcome to the home of the Reform Revolution, Clacton, where Nigel Farage won big, and posed a question about whether Britain's electoral system is looking ragged. Because Reform is now the 3rd biggest party in the UK by vote share, but only has 5 seats to show for it. Farage didn't hang around long to enjoy his new constituency, keen to make his point down in London.
Any more for any more?
Actually, yes! Just a liar and a racist. We need people who are going to bring unity, not division.
Although he had to wait for the hecklers to be ejected, and even for him, this was rather a lot.
It is very much my view that our outdated, first-past-the-post electoral system is not fit for purpose, and we will campaign with anyone and everyone to change this electoral system.
In Clacton, he won a big swing, a big majority. Most here were very happy about that, and only sorry that the rest of the country did not get to take part in the revolution.
What was the biggest thing that made you vote for him?
I don't know, he has like the most change. Like I think he could make a lot of change. We've been with like Labour for so long and they haven't really done anything.
When you take the whole country and majority vote for Reform, it's ridiculous. They come second in a lot of elections and nothing.
I know that's the old system, but come on, it's got to change. I hope Nigel tries to do something about that.
There is a lot at stake. The smaller parties are increasingly popular, but they're not winning electoral prizes in what remains a 2-horse race.
If you look at how well Reform did, not just here but across the country, how well the Greens did, how many independent candidates were successful, look at all that, you start to think, are we actually now a multi-party democracy, but still operating because of first-past-the-post in a 2-party system?
The vote share for the main parties has been falling, with people choosing other options, further right and further left. The danger is that first-past-the-post doesn't translate their will into power, and that the pressure, the dissatisfaction builds up. You'll hear much more on that from Farage, who has traded the wet benches at the seaside for the warm ones of Westminster, courtesy of the voters of Clacton. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Clacton-on-Sea.
Well, there have been plenty of jokes at the expense of Sir Ed Davey during the election campaign as the Lib Dem leader took part in stunt after stunt, most involving a wetsuit, which is what we need here now. But it was a record-breaking night for them, securing 71 MPs, well above even their highest expectations. Our political correspondent, Rob Powell, reports now on the new Lib Dem record.
After the stunts come the celebrations. The Lib Dem leader euphoric at a more than six-fold increase in seats. A record number that puts them back as the third party in Westminster.
We will stand up for those millions of people who are desperate for change, who want their health and care systems transformed, who want the economy to grow, but also to make sure it grows in a fair way where people's concerns of the costs of living are actually addressed.
Sir Ed Davey danced, jumped, and slid his way through this campaign. But there was policy too, with a focus on social care, a topic ignored by the other parties, as well as sewage and water quality. And come polling day, the Lib Dem leader had the last laugh. 5 cabinet ministers, including the Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, were unseated by the party. The Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, saw her 20,000 majority in Chichester vanish. This constituency has been Conservative held for more than a century, but in the West Sussex city today, anger with the Tory party as well as with the outgoing MP.
This time I think people had had enough.
Some people would have decided that even if they were Labour supporters, they would have to vote tactically.
They're all a shower, mate.
Did you vote?
No. For what? There's no change. There's no change.
But what about the mix of votes? While they've put on huge numbers of seats, the Lib Dem's share of the overall vote has barely changed since 2019 and actually now trails behind Reform. Much like Labour, the Lib Dems have piled up support in the right places. They've done that by running a tightly targeted campaign that's capitalised on tactical anti-Tory votes. For a party committed to electoral reform, Ed Davey's crew have got very good at making the current system work for them. Chichester's new MP says she knows some in the area lent her their vote.
I spoke to a lot of voters on the doorstep who might naturally have been inclined to vote Labour or Green had they lived somewhere else.
But this was a vote more against the Tories than for the Lib Dems, wasn't it?
I think some people might see it like that, but I disagree. I think that we ran a really positive campaign.
Whatever the strategy, it worked. Modern-day changes in how we all decide our vote, returning the Lib Dems to glories of the past. Rob Powell, Sky News in Chichester.
Well, on the night the issue of Gaza plagued Labour in areas with a high proportion of Muslim voters, Jess Phillips managed to hold on, if only just, in Birmingham Yardley, despite an ugly campaign marred by threats and protests. But the Shadow Postmaster General, Jonathan Ashworth, lost out to the independent candidate Shaukat Adam in Leicester South by less than 1,000 votes. And the former leader Jeremy Corbyn beat the official Labour candidate in Islington North, fighting on a pro-Palestinian ticket. Sky's correspondent Greg Mylan reports now on the Gaza revolt.
On a night of almost unbroken success for Labour, when Britain in large part chose them, Leicester South had a surprise in store. The independent candidate Shaukat Adam took this seat.
13,760.
Removing Shadow Minister Jonathan Ashworth, who he'd criticised for failing to back a ceasefire in Gaza.
This is for the people of Gaza.
For many, including Wahid, Labour's position on Gaza mattered.
Him staying silent on Gaza is going to have an effect, definitely, especially with who was opposing him and Shaukat Adam. So, yeah, not surprising.
Was that an important issue to you that it was raised?
Me, being as a Muslim, it was a priority, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's local issues, of course, but with what's going on, being so fresh in the mind, not just in his vocal, he didn't support Gaza at all.
It was an issue too in Birmingham Yardley. Jess Phillips narrowly holding her seat, but the tension clear.
How has politics got so low in people's minds that, you know, the idea of, you know, getting rid of hard-working members of Parliament to just vote for grievance is, I have to say, a real difficulty, and actually politicians have got a responsibility for that.
On the streets of her constituency today, the evidence that those feelings still persist within the community. The change in the political landscape is unlikely to make those fade from view. Labour also lost out elsewhere to pro-Gaza independents. Among them, the former leader they expelled, Jeremy Corbyn. We knew during the campaign that there was very real discontent in places like this about Labour's position on Gaza. It's now for Keir Starmer to deal with as Prime Minister. But he'll know, even with a huge majority, the potential damage that very public infighting can do. But a message has been sent from places like this, and they're waiting to see if the new Prime Minister is listening. Greg Milam, Sky News, Leicester.
As I read it. Well, now we have a new government. The first point of business will be to steer the economy back to black. Rachel Reeves, now the Chancellor, is the first woman to take on the role, and she has taken a difficult task with stagnant growth and stretched public services. Sky's business correspondent Paul Kelso has been looking at the economic challenge ahead.
After an historic result, an historic appointment.
It is also a huge privilege to be the first ever female Chancellor of the Exchequer. To every young woman and
Rachel Reeves leading Labour's response to a monumental economic challenge.
I want to be the most pro-growth Treasury in our country's history. That'll mean doing what the Treasury does best, building growth on a rock of economic stability.
Having turned the political map red, Labour's priority is to steer the economy into the black. In the city, traders saw an early vote of confidence. What's going on?
Yes, I think what we're sort of seeing is, you know, the market was really expecting what we've seen this morning. It seems like the UK electorate voted for some stability via a centrist government.
Less than 2 years after Liz Truss sent markets crashing, Sir Keir Starmer's victory priced in by the investors on whom he will now rely.
Financial markets were expecting a Labour win, but the lack of drama here is good news for Sir Keir Starmer. His programme to revive public services depends on stimulating growth, and to do that, he'll need the confidence of the businesses and investors who provide it.
With inflation back to 2% and interest rates likely to fall next month, the economic weather may be turning. Labour want to build on that with sweeping planning reform to unlock new housing and accelerate the green energy transition, including onshore wind and solar projects held back in the last decade. All good news for the boss of Britain's biggest energy supplier.
I hope that what we've now got is the stability that we can invest in delivering a cheaper green electricity system. We need to sort out the planning and bureaucracy problems. That means you can't build cheap, new renewable generation in the UK, anything like the pace we need to.
The oil and gas industry is less relaxed, facing an increased windfall tax and a ban on new North Sea extraction. The new government's in-tray is challenging too. Thames Water is drowning in debt and may fall into administration even as customer bills rise. A deal with Tata to save steelmaking in Port Talbot will be demanded by Labour's heartlands, all while getting nationalisation of the railways on track. And business wants to talk about Europe. Golden Delight Foods lost all of its export trade to Brexit. With 60 employees and plans to expand, Socrates wants a proper debate about the cost of business.
I want to open the borders. I want that free trade back. We want to be able to deal with our neighbours. We've made a mistake. We've got to go back there and renegotiate.
Rachel Reeves has set strict rules limiting the new government's room for manoeuvre. If Labour is to keep her promise not to raise taxes, they'll have to earn it. Paul Kelso, Sky News.
Well, the US President Joe Biden has spoken to the new Prime Minister tonight and congratulated him for the win, said they're looking forward to strengthening the special relationship. Let's find out more and head to our US correspondent James Matthews, who's in Washington. A photograph released, James, of the conversation, this end at least, but what more have you learnt about their conversation?
Yeah, Joe Biden and a campaign stop in Wisconsin found the time to give Keir Starmer a call. They spoke freedom and democracy, the continued commitment to that on a worldwide scale. They emphasised the importance of this special relationship. They talked Northern Ireland and a continued commitment to the gains of the Good Friday Agreement. It's complicated for Sir Keir Starmer, America right now. He will come here next week for the NATO 75th anniversary summit. When he steps off the plane, he will step into a political drama around the sitting president. Joe Biden will be his host, but Starmer knows he could be shaking a dead man's hand, because who knows how long politically Joe Biden can last. They have a shared thinking on the key policy matters, certainly on the international scale in terms of Gaza, Ukraine, the future importance of NATO, but that will aggravate Trump, with whom Starmer might have to do business. Keir Starmer, his diplomacy with regard to the United States has to be three-dimensional, with Biden, with the Democrat who could replace him, and with Trump who could replace both. Trump 2.0 would be complicated. It won't have gone unnoticed in number 10 that Trump on his social media site congratulated Nigel Farage on winning a seat in Westminster. He made no mention of Keir Starmer. Somebody tonight in number 10, Anna, will be sitting up late to watch the Biden set-piece interview. He's giving an extended TV interview on ABC. It amounts to a trial by television for his suitability to continue in office. If he falters, it's no exaggeration to say that could do it for him amidst a deepening air of crisis. In the past couple of hours, Senator Mark Warner, a serious player within Democratic ranks, he's called for a meeting of Democrat senators when they come back from recess to discuss the president and whether or not he can continue.
Turbulent times there. James, thank you very much indeed. Well, there we have it then, a Labour government, the first time we have had a shift from right to left in nearly 30 years, and only the 7th Labour Prime Minister ever. I've been looking back at those Labour years.
We did it!
In the end, it was a victory, the like of which had not been seen in decades.
I've just accepted Her Majesty the Queen's kind offer to form a new administration of government in this country.
It is 27 years since Labour last took power from the Tories. 13 years in office, 14 out. The defeat of Gordon Brown in 2010 would cast Labour to the sidelines until now. Who would take charge came down to a wrestle between two brothers.
Did we go for David Miliband or Ed Miliband? It was as simple as that.
So if you look back at the last 14 years and there was one thing that led to you not being in power, what would it be?
Actually going to one member, one vote to elect your leader and future Prime Minister was not a good move.
I'm in love with the shape of you.
And so the rise of Jeremy Corbyn, a dramatic shift to the left. For a moment, a rock star on the Glastonbury lineup.
He had a sort of, godlike status. There was a sort of cult of Jeremy Corbyn fans. The problem was they were quite a small number of people.
With Brexit's stalemate, calls for a second referendum from the then shadow Brexit secretary.
There's only one way forward now, and that is to put this issue back to the people.
And then accusations of anti-Semitism would tear the Labour Party apart.
Will you resign from the party?
Of course not.
But 2 years later, the combination of Boris,
hello, how are you?
Brexit and Corbyn, and the party's worst electoral defeat since 1935. Corbyn resigns and is later suspended. Sir Keir Starmer taking the helm. What has Keir Starmer done to make Labour electable?
Apart from not being Jeremy Corbyn,
It was to get rid of that stain of anti-Semitism.
Rebuilt the trust in the Labour Party.
Election after election, win or lose, Labour has rewritten its message. This time, the winning slogan turned out to be a single word.
Change.
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 For now, the Tories must rebuild. And for Sir Keir, time to build trust with the British people who put him in number 10.
Andrew Pearce on the Mall.
Well, let's turn now to our press preview and a first look at tomorrow's front pages. Joined here in Downing Street by the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Whitehall editor of the Financial Times, Lucy Fisher. I have to say the rain is very good for his new lawn, but it's quite a disturbed first night with all of us down here, wouldn't you say?
I would have thought so,
yeah. Absolutely. Let's crack on with the papers, though. Your paper, first of all, The Mirror. You know, now time to begin. In his view, there's so much work to do, is the point.
The reason he made that point himself is the old roll up your sleeves, get to business, appoint your cabinet, have them meet tomorrow, waste no time, keep Parliament sitting to the end of July, then you come back at the end of August. No, he's got to hit the ground running. He's got a thumping majority, but of course he didn't get a huge share of the vote. That matters less than the votes. You play the game. He was like Harry Kane. He took all his chances, and he's got a House of Commons with a huge number of MPs, but you've got to deliver to people.
Yeah.
That's how
winners and losers with first past the post. Labour, the Lib Dems, the losers, the Conservatives, possibly Nigel Farage, particularly in terms of the share of the vote they got. The FT as well. Where are you taking this from? What's your angle for the paper tomorrow?
Well, I think looking at Keir Starmer talking about stability and moderation, the work for change begins now. He said on the steps outside the lacquered front door here on this very street just a few hours ago. And I think it's as Kevin says, trying to put that mission to drive economic growth at the heart of his programme, because he's vowed not to raise a whole range of taxes. He's also vowed not to borrow more for day-to-day spending, and he's ruled out a return to austerity. So unless he has a miraculous level of growth and more money to spend on public services and transforming the nation, he will have to kind of go back on one of those pledges.
Yes, which makes the front page of the Daily Mail a difficult thing to do. Now he has to deliver. But if you don't have the extra spending, where's it coming from? And the idea has been mooted that it's going to be a very short honeymoon. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, that's the Daily Mail that backed his opponent, Rishi Sunak, and they got hammered and were warning that he'd be some terrible danger to Britain once he got in. There is going to be this problem. If you analyse the whole campaign, 14 years, Tory misrule, Britain is broken, smashed, nothing works, how is stability and moderation going to transform the country? And if you boxed yourself in financially and you bet number 10 on growth, well, growth will take a while to kick in. So the honeymoon could be short, it could be long. Like the Tories are smashed, Farage will make a lot of noise. But if you just look serious and if you can begin to make some progress, if West Streeting can settle the junior doctors' strike, for instance, that will be a move forward. Once you're in power, you can pull levers, you can press buttons, you can change the music.
And I think even today we saw the FTSE 250 reach a high that it last saw in April 2022. The pound is up. It shows the markets have responded positively to Labour coming in. And I think over the next few days, in the FT, we've had word that Labour is going to forge ahead with some of the supply-side reforms it promised on planning, making it very much more in favour of development in terms of the rules, rewriting the national planning framework, reimposing targets. And I think that is a real way to kind of channel money into the economy quite quickly and potentially begin the long process for solving one of the key problems facing the country, and particularly young people, which is access to housing.
Yeah.
The Express talks about let us be gracious in defeat. And actually people have said, the speeches here by both the outgoing and the incoming were gracious. And in fact, some of the overnight speeches were gracious and well applauded too, like Sir Robert Buckland, James Cleverly.
Yeah.
Liz Truss perhaps not so much, because we didn't hear from her.
No.
She was slow clapped onto the stage. But, is this idea of being gracious, would that have helped the Conservatives, rather, in their election campaign or in the last year even?
Yeah, I think yes, because Rishi Sunak said, Keir Starmer actually is decent and public-spirited. We didn't hear any of that during the election when he was a threat to national security and was a jeopardy to your wages, your job, your house and the country. It's a better tone. And I think as a Prime Minister, you've won a victory. You've won a handsome victory in Parliament, but you've only got about a third of the votes. You want to reach out and pull more people in, so you say, I'm going to represent you too. You'll get a better hearing. I think it's the right tone.
But that said, I think you also need to deliver. And yes, we had COVID and the Ukraine war, but in terms of the amount of the manifesto pledges that the Conservatives failed to deliver, I think competence was really what was, on the line in terms of the polls, and a change of tone wouldn't have been enough to.
Let's not talk about Rwanda here, shall we?
But he did say, was it action, not words? I mean, you wrote a very well-received book on Emily Wilder-Davison, one of the suffragettes, and it was deeds, not words, and that's how you'll be judged at the end.
Telegraph talks about, picking up one of the big issues as well, the NHS. Again, the same picture of Sir Keir there. Streeting, the NHS is broken. I mean, the issues are enormous, aren't they, Lucia? That's the point for them.
They are indeed, and I think that's why Wes Streeting, the new Health Secretary, has on day one tried to sort of own that and say that it is now official policy of the new Labour government that the NHS is broken. That is the experience of patients as well as many clinicians and other people who work in the health service, and you've got to diagnose the problem if you want to be able to treat it properly. I think Wes Streeting, in opposition, has talked a bold game about reform, and given there's not a lot of money to be injected into the health service, where spending has already gone up precipitously, over the past few years, that is going to be something they need to grapple with, reform, if they're to make any progress.
Yeah, it's in about 6 months you'll say GPs are treating more people than ever and so on, but at the moment you want to say it's broken, pin it all on the Conservatives.
Running out of time. Kevin Maguire, Lucy Fisher, thank you. See you for more, obviously, in the 11. A massive day then. Sir Keir Starmer in the building behind us, moving into number 10 as the new Labour government takes shape. The first cabinet, we're told, tomorrow. As I said, the lawn is enjoying, not so much we are, the extraordinary rain down here. It is 11 o'clock. This is Sky News' extended news review and press preview, live from Downing Street. Our top story. History is made with a Labour landslide and the first Labour Prime Minister since 2010.
Whether you voted Labour or not, in fact, especially if you did not,